The Italian filmmaker and novelist Francesca Marciano writes of the African continent. Why is it you can never hope to describe the emotion Africa creates? You are lifted out of whatever pit, unbound from whatever tie, released from whatever fear. You are lifted and you see it all from above. Hemingway simply said, "If I have ever seen magic, it has been in Africa." Hello, I'm David Peacock and welcome to the Future Tourism Podcast. My guest today is Castro Ambiyo. He's the founder and CEO of Place Brand Africa. And in his own words, he created Place Brand Africa to reduce the knowledge gap in place marketing and provide a platform for the exchange of ideas on the future of tourism. He's a marketer by profession and an alumni of Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. I met Castro at the City Nation Place Roundtable in November that I co-hosted with Carolyn Dawson, the Business Development Manager for Simple View UK. Good morning, Castro Ambiyo. How are you? Where are you?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
What's it like there?
I'm in Nairobi, Kenya, the magical Kenya that you hear about. It's a beautiful sunny day. There's much to appreciate here because we have the sun all the time. Probably we take it for granted, but it's a sunny day.
Well, you don't need to take it for granted today. I'm sitting here in Toronto with 4 inches of snow, so I'm warmed at the idea of Nairobi, Kenya, sitting in the sun.
And Nairobi is referred to as the green city in the sun.
There it is. We met, as I said, at a City Nation Place roundtable. Carolyn Dawson was there. We had a great discussion, about 15 of us from around the world: Helsinki, Israel, Nairobi, Toronto, England, Scotland, you name it. 3 things came up during that roundtable, and really the 3 things were the pressing need for stakeholder engagement. We all agreed, no matter where we were and what we were working on, that the future of tourism involved a different tact in terms of engaging stakeholders and making them part of the tourism product. We all understood that that led to the kind of community alignment and shared values that we aspire to. And we all realized that we were in varying states of digital sophistication, and that really we had yet to truly meet the consumer where and how they shop as tourism marketers or as tourism developers. What did you take away from that roundtable?
What I took away from that roundtable are those 3 issues, but those 3 issues are not the definition of those 3 issues in different continents and different destinations are totally different. Because if we look at stakeholder engagement, if you look at how the tourism industry in Africa was set up, it was set up not by including the community, but by getting the community out of tourism. Then you come to realize that this tourism is based on wildlife, and 60% of that wildlife lives in communities. So we created these big, beautiful parks to hold animals, but then these animals are migratory. These animals are migratory, and we are not able to manage them in parks. So it becomes important that stakeholders, especially communities, which brings that interface that we were talking about, are involved in designing the tourism of the future.
So let's go back to that concept you talked about, which is the tourism product was developed by people taking the locals out of the product. And you wrote a great paper back in 2017 as why Kenya's tourism industry is stagnant. Talk to me about the safari product, because you say it was a product developed by taking the locals out of it. Tell me what that means.
Yes, because in order to develop a park, you need land. Previously, this land, communities lived in it, and they lived with the animals. So when you gazette the land, you probably take the land by forceful acquisition by government and move the communities to the periphery of these parks. These parks are not fenced. Animals cannot live in one locality. They keep on moving into community and back. That is the reason why that article that I wrote, and the way it was structured on deep and big safari, big game safari. But as we move to the new century, big game safari is only 4% of tourism across the world. Now, we have a new demographic that's coming up that is not appreciative of big game safari. They're appreciative of culture, they're appreciative of community, they're appreciative of doing things that are totally different from what we package. Now, here's a good example that I asked in that article. If you took an 18-year-old from Dallas, Texas, and brought them to Nairobi with 3 of their friends and gave them a holiday for 7 days, what will they do after they go to the game parks?
Right. So let me talk to you about the actual safari product, though, because there's a really interesting parallel here, and I think one of the most remarkable things that I encountered talking to you, the sort of penny drop for me was, it wasn't surprising to me that we all shared the same difficult tasks ahead of us: engaging stakeholders, building alignment, increasing our digital. It's that we need different tools at different points in time. But once again, you surprised me with a parallel here. In Canada, we've had a tremendous tourism product for many years, but particularly the last 50 years, we've done quite well. Our immigration patterns were such that Europeans immigrating to Canada created a very high demand for our tourism product. Literally, visiting friends and relatives for the last 50 years have filled out our tourism coffers, so to speak, and that's changed in the last decade. I'm not a native-born Canadian. I'm an Englishman, or an English boy, actually, is more like it. Moved here, and of course, for the next 20 years, my relatives all came to visit, and they wanted to go to Niagara Falls, and they wanted to go to Vancouver, and they wanted to see a moose. And as a result of that, I will tell you this: when we really started to look at why Canada wasn't performing as well internationally as a conversion market versus its place in the world, which is aspirationally everybody wants to come to Canada, but sometime in the 90s it fell off to the point where, even though it was aspirationally number 1 or number 2 on a lot of people's lists in the world, it was number 20 when it came to conversion. And after a lot of work, we pared that down and realized we hadn't done destination development in 40 years because we'd had such a heyday of Euro influx of travelers based on our immigration patterns. You make a parallel in the Kenya case that the safari business was really high end when it started, and it really did a great job of catering to the traveler. And in fact, you cut your teeth coming up through that system. You worked in the safari business as a young man, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I worked in the safari business, actually at the core of the safari business, which is wildlife conservation. So I worked for Kenya Wildlife Service in the marketing department. So we offered the product, the wildlife product, and you are able to see how what the tourism blueprint refers to as a systemic problem that has bedeviled the industry over time. You can actually see it when you go. It is seasonal. It attracts a certain segment of people. If they are not coming, if anything happens and they can't come, that tourism product is dead. Yet the pie of tourism is so big. We have one of the best beaches in Africa, in Diani, but we are not selling the beach. Yet the beach internationally contributes 24% of tourism across the world. So why don't we give people an option to use that beach? I was talking to you about food. If you walk around, go globally, you'll find Chinese cuisine, you will find French cuisine. But you cannot find Kenyan cuisine or anything that's called Kenyan cuisine. They will tell you it's something called nyama choma, but nyama choma is just barbecue beef, which everyone has. So it's special food.
But you are telling me there is Kenyan cuisine.
There is, but the systemic issue is that when the tourism industry was created, it was created to provide food for the international market. So you will get French cuisine at a hotel, even a 3-star hotel. You will get English breakfast. You will get all this international cuisine, but the local cuisine was not central to the tourism product.
Okay, so let me go back to the core of your argument. You made a really good point early on in this conversation. Only 4% of the world's travel activity is safari based. And the truth of the matter is the continent owned safari. I mean, it really did. But you are really making a case for diversification and localhood. And you talked to me previously about, as you said, cuisine, the beauty of these local villages, some of the crafts and arts in these villages. When you created Place Brand Africa, you were cognizant that that's the shift that you wanted to champion, the shift to elevating and developing the local attributes in a way that took the African continent's offerings and said, we're not just safari. That is part of your motivation, isn't it?
That is part of the motivation. That is the core motivation. We want to build a groundswell of people, a bottom-up approach to tourism, such that it's not the ministry and the destination marketers who decide. And technology gives us this opportunity to build this groundswell from down up. And the communities have things they want to share with the world. These things might never make it to the national brochure, but there are amazing issues, amazing things, amazing craft that people can learn. And if you look at the traveler of today wants immersive experiences. They want something that touches their hearts and challenges their heads. Sitting in a safari van for 3 hours looking for a lion you might never see will not challenge your brain or challenge your heart until the moment you see it. Those are the serious issues that we need to look at, and that is the core of Place Brand Africa. That we can build. If banks in Kenya and banks in Pakistan created microfinance systems for women and grew up to become big banks, we can begin a groundswell of small enterprises and startups that curate their own experiences, use the digital platforms available, and sell it to the world. It's now a global marketplace. We cannot rely on 4 source markets as a destination.
So you were a part of the South Africa Investment Conference this year, and I'm really thrilled to see not only are they dealing with the obvious detriments of COVID-19 and what it's done to the continental economy, but they're also looking at the future. And one of the points in there that I was excited about, because I heard your voice and saw your fingerprints all over it, was the idea that in the strategic priority focus area of tourism, the final report from the conference said, funding in support of sectoral transformation was key, and that accelerated implementation of a tourism equity fund that's supporting strategic investments will continue. That's good news. And then I was really thrilled when I read some of the investment opportunities, and they literally, safari is not on the list. It's a given. Safari is there, but cultural tourism, ecotourism, adventure tourism, sport tourism, wine tourism, medical tourism, theme parks. You must have been excited to read that.
Yes. That is where we are supposed to go. And that is driven by the future traveler. Who are we looking at? Safari is given, as you say, but how can we then attract a new segment of people? The same, even the Kenyan government gave a stimulus package to tourism, of which 56 million US dollars, the tourism industry. And how did they structure theirs? 20 million US dollars went to renovation of hotels. 10 million went to hiring community rangers. And 10 million went to conservancies. These two are important. 10 million went to marketing. So the 10 millions that went to conservancies and community scouts are important, because community scouts protect this wildlife in the community. And with the effects of COVID-19, and dwindling economic fortunes of the people, it was easier for them to revive their poaching and start targeting animals for food. And then when they give the 10 million to conservancies are basically community land that have given their land for alternative land use, so that you can keep wildlife in our land, but when tourists come, then we are able to share in that profit.
So the money that's going to the conservancies, can it be used for developing tourism product?
Now, that is a challenge because the other thing is that 60% of revenue from conservancies goes to operations. 40% that is now needed for developing the product, serving the community, because tourism is now, they need to provide clean water to the, manage the schools and all that.
So you and I had this discussion a few weeks ago. In a world where you basically had to start to build the cultural tourism products, ecotourism, and when we say build, what we're really talking about is working with those operators, aligning with them, not starting from scratch, but helping to amplify what they're doing. I prefer to call it destination development than product development, because the people are out there, they're doing these things already. If you had to market that to the world from zero in a conventional sense, the weight and pressure of the marketing budgets would crush you. There's just you couldn't take the money away from Safari, and you couldn't put enough money into destination development. But we had this discussion, you and I, and this is why you're at Delft University of Tech, of all places, for a marketer, because you get to skip that middle step in some sense. You get to jump past the 1950s model of marketing that we created, where you have huge target markets and you're looking to capture a big piece of that and move large tranches of people. We can go right to digital. We can go right to highlighting through social and through social digital, especially, the things that you have to offer. And that's part of your focus of Place Brand Africa, isn't it?
Yes, David, that's our focus. And it actually, we thought at the beginning of this year when COVID came, that this was our inflection point as Africa to get digital. We have been complaining over the years that the budgets are low. But technology is so good to us that, for example, Kenya has 20 million people on internet-based mobile phones. And Android has been so good that instead of just providing you with a real Android, which you get in Canada, they have developed light apps, which use very little, at 1% of what you use on a normal Android. You still have access, and you can do everything that somebody with a smart Android phone can do. So we need to take this conversation away from big budgets, which the beauty of it is that Africa has skipped all those industrial revolution, agricultural revolution, and they're now bang in the middle of the internet revolution. So they should totally take advantage of it, because it is almost ubiquitous. Having a mobile phone is ubiquitous across Africa right now.
Well, and you make a great point. The reason the Android light phones are so appealing is the fact that data coverage is still not, it's not a high data rate. So you said something to me that just blew my mind when we were in that City Nation Place roundtable. The question came up. So in a world where we're looking at the next, sort of three major issues to be addressed in tourism, being, stakeholder engagement, using that to align ourselves with civic and city priorities, and digital sophistication, what tools do you need? And you said to me, we need SMS tools, because we like to use low data applications to speak to locals. And it blew my mind, because we have the same problems, but we need different tools to address those. Talk to me about engaging locals as part of the tourism product, because I believe myself it's critically important. If you develop good tourism product and you share it socially, it has to be authentic. And if it has to be authentic, it has to resonate with locals. So your first step, you said to me, was to develop these tourism products or develop these destinations, but to do it in a way that continental Africans appreciated the product.
I totally agree with that sentiment, because if the domestic tourist or the stakeholder or the community does not appreciate the product that you are selling, how will they help you sell it in a world where the first person who kills your product is probably your domestic customer? Because there's user-generated content. You may want to go to Serengeti today. Then you go to TripAdvisor and you try and find a review of Serengeti. Then you find all the locals are talking about this property and they're talking about it negatively. Would you go there? No. So you must engage them. And I always believe in engaging communities from the basic. It's one thing that happens is that we like running to the new things. Now let's move to Instagram, let's move to Facebook. But I believe that we must always cover the first basic. And the first basic for mobile phone and community engagement is always the SMS.
So when you look at the destination development opportunity over the next 3 to 5 years, where do you start? I mean, I know you're working with governments in Kenya. I know you've been part of the South African government's thinking on tourism redevelopment. What's the next step for Castro Ambiyo and Place Brand Africa?
Number one, we are looking to create a network of individuals, not just local, but global, so that we are looking to get a network of individuals globally, so that we are able to merge thinking of what can happen in Africa. So we bring the African experience and then have a global perspective about it. So just like you had future tourism, we need a component of future tourism that's highlighting Africa, because Africa's issues are a little special than other issues.
So can I look forward to Castro Ambiyo hosting the Future of Tourism Africa? That would be pretty cool.
We are looking at hosting the Future Tourism of Africa next year. So it is something that we need to start working on how we're going to have the future of tourism next year, so that we can listen. Listening is a very important thing in creating a future of tourism. Then we need to develop trainings before we get to the future of tourism in Africa next year. We need to have done at least 3 trainings for small enterprises and startups, so that we begin to build that groundswell, that even when they go into stakeholder engagement with the destination marketing, then they're able to articulate the issues from the ground up. And with that, we change the model of tourism over time.
Castro, that is music to my ears. One of the toughest shifts I see in the new model of tourism based on stakeholder engagement and digital excellence is this. People ask me how you get started. And I think really as destination organizations, there's almost what I call an approach avoidance conflict, to borrow a term from psychology. We all want to do it, and as we get closer to it, we don't know where to start. And I was talking this week with Rika from Finland, who we both met in the CNP conference, and I said, how do you start? And she said very simply, the toughest thing about that is you start small. You start with 3 people, and then 6 people, and then 12 people, and then 24 people. Stakeholder engagement is something you must do yourself as a destination organization. No one can do it for you. And it is. The numbers are small, but the costs are small associated with it, and the paybacks are huge.
I totally agree with you. And we need to empower and enable those stakeholders that when they are engaging the destination management, then they're talking the right issues. They're talking stakeholder engagement, they're talking community, they're talking digital. That's
wow. I love your trajectory over the next year. I think it is one of the most realistic and practical programs. Start with education, get to the point where you can have a Future of Tourism conference in a year and people are speaking the same language, and to do it in a methodical sense. I'm excited about it. I hope we can help and contribute to it, because we certainly see the value in that. any thoughts you want to share with the rest of the world? You're a tourism marketer, based in the continent, but you're a totally world citizen. What do you have to share with us?
I think there's just something that I got here. And there's a writer called Arundhati Roy writing in the Financial Times in April. And she states, and this quotation brings what we need to do out, whether we start or we move forward. So she says, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarices, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoking skies behind us, or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. So Place Brand Africa is ready to imagine another tourism world. And we are going to have a network of people that are ready to fight with us to change the tourism in Africa.
Well, Castro, I got to tell you, it's a real pleasure to know you, and I so enjoy talking to you when we get a chance to do that. I hope you come back in the new year and talk to us about the progress, and maybe we can be your meter stick and tell you if you're moving fast enough or slow enough, but certainly would like to be part of it. Thank you so much for being here today, and keep us in the loop and reach out to us and let us know what's going on and where we can help, and I certainly will do the same with you. It's great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too. Enjoy your day.